Boys proudly presents NASCAR Inside Winston Cup.
Welcome to the show.
Want me to help you?
No, not really. We're going to talk about the truck race. We got the Busch race, the Winston Cup race, all coming up. But probably the highlight of the weekend was seeing the Petty family back at the racetrack. And we're going to talk about it next on NASCAR's Inside Winston Cup.
Welcome to NASCAR Inside Winston Cup. Alan Bestwick here in our Charlotte studio, where over the next hour we will attempt to expertly analyze, dissect, and thoroughly review the weekend's races for the NASCAR Winston Cup, Busch, and Craftsman Truck Series, and failing that, we'll at least have a couple of laughs anyway. We welcome to the program our expert panel of drivers here to review the action from Dover and Monroe. Michael Waltrip, driver of the Nation's Rent Chevy for Ultra Mate Motorsports. Johnny Benson, driver of the Lycos Pontiac for Tyler Jet Racing. And Ken Schrader, driver of the M&M's Pontiac for MB2 Racing. Mr. Schrader started 31st. And finished 23rd on Sunday.
Yeah, we just charged right up there for 23rd.
This was the video we could find of you.
Yeah, that's when I got underneath Tony, and then he made a run back around the top. Really pretty uneventful day. We didn't run all that bad. We had a few little problems, and had a really neat problem with the windshield.
Yeah, go ahead.
Pulled the stuff off that they put on there so you can take it off and then see. And Johnny was just telling me he's had it happen to him before. Couldn't see nothing. It just like the glue was like an 1/8 inch thick. So 5 or 6 pit stops fix that. 23rd. How was your day, Johnny?
Johnny started 34th, finished 15th. You were 10th with about, what, 10 laps to go? What happened?
Well, about 20, and we had a right front tire cut down on us and managed to make it to pit road without hitting anything. And then, so we ended up 15th. But Lycos Pontiac, all the guys, James Inch, Gary Putnam, all the guys, just terrific job all day. And I didn't believe that we were going to have a car near that good at the start because happy hour didn't go real well. So we're real pleased with that.
Mikey started 15th, wound up 39th. I think I heard a ticking around lap 185.
Yes, I heard it before that, but it became public about that point. We had some trouble with the engine on our little Phillips light bulbs Nation's Rent Chevrolet. What a pretty car. That's me there driving it. Don't I look comfortable? I got a great
Well, at that point, you're coasting on the apron of the track, headed for the garage for the day.
I should have been comfortable. I was probably upset, but I was just real happy with the whole weekend up until engine failure. So we'll just regroup and go to Michigan and try to get back after them. Our car has been qualifying real well lately, and I like Michigan, so we look forward to going up there. And I'm glad to be here with you guys to find out what actually happened after I left.
Being honest about it anyway. We've got expert reviews of both Dover races, the truck race from the weekend, which was wild as well if you didn't see that one, question of the week, and a preview of Michigan as well, so stick around. We'll come right back.
NASCAR Inside Winston Cup is presented by Pep Boys. Cars like us, people love us. And Fran, who asks, when was the last time you changed your air filter?
Back on NASCAR Inside Winston Cup to check the news headlines now, along with our expert panel. We'll start with qualifying on Friday at Dover, and for the 4th time this year, Rusty Wallace held the Bud Pole Award trophy, this time with a lap of 157.411 miles an hour, edging Bill Elliott for the pole by 1/100th of a second. 30th career Winston Cup pole for Rusty. This would be a Pontiac that would be getting a new rear bumper cover. Beginning with the Michigan race this weekend, NASCAR announcing a rule change Thursday night. We'll talk about that in a minute. And Andy Petree's 55 team has been penalized by NASCAR. They have been charged 2 test dates for the one that they used at Michigan back in May because they used 2 drivers and 2 cars, which is a violation of NASCAR's testing policy. And we discuss some of these headlines now with our expert panel, Michael Waltrip, Johnny Benson, and Ken Schrader. Qualifying first, I expected a run at the track record. We've set a bunch of them already this year, but we were actually the pole speed 0.4 of a second slower than last September.
Wasn't that refreshing? Good Lord, it's fun not to have to go around Dover at 22:40. That's just breakneck speed. We were able to get down in the 22s still, which is fast at that racetrack. But the tire that Goodyear brought...
Speak for yourself.
We ran right around the 23-second mark. How about that? But the tire Goodyear brought was excellent for qualifying. It didn't spook you. It didn't have anything crazy about it. And I think the speeds, Alan, are all relative to what tire they bring. They can make us go as fast as they want us to go to a certain extent. And that tire that they brought this time, obviously they were conscious that the right fronts get really some abuse during the race, and it was probably a little bit more conservative. Even though we did see some trouble in the race, it probably was the reason why it wasn't quite as fast in qualifying.
Anybody want to take a stab at the testing violation that Andy Petrie's team was penalized for and explain why that is?
No.
Well, you're only allowed to have 2 cars and 1 driver. Used to be like Daytona, we could take 3, 4 cars, 2, 3 drivers, do whatever you wanted. Now it's 2 cars, 1 driver, and they took 2 cars, 2 drivers, and they got ratted in. They got thrown in by a fellow competitor. Can you believe that? And I heard there was another team that's had the same problem.
And it's going to be brought forth.
Can we throw that in?
Be brought forth too.
The Pontiac rule change.
That would be where we're heading next.
Now, is that a crazy thing or what?
How do you figure?
Well, first, before we get there, hang on.
You got your Chevy deal.
Before we get there, let's explain what it is and so on. It is a new rear bumper cover. Explain what the rear bumper cover is and how the new one's different from the one that you're running now.
That's so easy to explain that I'm going to let Johnny do it.
Yeah, I thought so. We wish we had one here to explain. All we did is
We could
basically
see to
made the
that.
rear bumper cover the same as a Ford and a Chevy, where it's squared off at the corners.
Okay,
so we can get the added downforce that the Ford and the Chevy has.
Let me handle this.
Okay,
And
let's go
we
from
wanted the spoiler so we could get what they all have, but we didn't get that.
Right,
We got
you
the
didn't
bumper
need that.
cover.
But you
Here's the
didn't
deal.
expect to get everything you wanted.
The rear bumper
Well, we
cover
wanted some on the front too.
The rear bumper cover basically gives them more downforce in the rear. They're first and second in the points. And out of all the Pontiacs that were in Dover, only one of them didn't finish in the top 15 that didn't run into something. So there's not that many of them. And
Hey,
they're
you
all
trying-
excellent.
are you trying to say something?
We're talking about 34 races. not
No,
one
if
race.
I was trying to say something, I would have said only you finished outside the top. Only you finished outside the top 15.
How could you take a Pontiac and run that bad?
But I'm not kidding, Alan. I think that NASCAR, I don't know where this rule change comes from because the guys are leading the points. Bobby Labonte almost won Charlotte right on them. They were first and third yesterday. It looks to me as if perhaps that it's not really something that was needed.
If
But
they're trying to make everything equal,
time
and
will
they're
tell.
taking all these cars to the wind tunnel, and it's everything
and this
states
doesn't
that the
make it equal.
Pontiac
So
needs help, and it's not. I mean, just because the 20 and the 18, the Bobby Labonte team is doing such a good job, they're way behind where they were last year. It's just everyone else is having more trouble.
Okay, there you have it.
That's it.
Point counterpoint. Jay, you ignorant?
The next thing on my sheet to ask was if the Pontiac teams were going to take any abuse because Tony Stewart won yesterday, but I guess Mike handled that for me before I got there. I appreciate the help.
Let's move on.
We'll take a break here, come back and get into our review of Sunday's MBNA Platinum 400 from Dover next.
One more lap. How about that? Hot rod. Big hard. Good job, man. Great job, crew.
Well, when all the leaders came in, it took the load off my mind as far as knocking the fuel mileage game out of it. At least it was up to who drove the fastest at the end. But, you know, I know Matt, and even though he's a rookie this year, I knew that on a restart he was going to be tough, and he was. He almost got underneath us in 3 once, and we knew that we were going to have to run the 10 hardest laps of our life there for the end just to win this thing.
Thoughts of Tony Stewart, winner Sunday in the MBNA Platinum 400 at the Monster Mile, and welcome back to NASCAR Inside Winston Cup. We review the event now with Michael Waltrip, Johnny Benson, and Ken Schrader. Our race summary, 14 lead changes among 10 drivers. Some of that kind of helped by green flag pit stops. 10 cautions for 58 laps, and only 5 of the 43 starters finished on the lead lap. Both Both races this weekend at Dover had kind of similar patterns. A lot of cautions in the first half of the race and a lot of green flag running in the second half of the race. Let's start with Sunday's early trouble, which happened at lap 4 off of turn 2. The cars you will see in the circle on the screen are those of Rick Mast and Steve Park racing side by side. And one of them will not come out on the other end of the straightaway.
Well, Rick Mastis said that that yellow car,
That's Steve Park.
well, I didn't know who it was. I just heard Rick's comments. He was really mad at the yellow car for running into the wall in the first lap and then coming off the wall and getting him. And you can see, basically, that's what happened. Steve got a little high, and he didn't realize Rick was under him, and he moved over, and the two cars came together, and Rick was the...
Good thing Rick was there, otherwise Steve might have hit that inside wall.
That's right. That was and Jerry Nadeau was about 10 cars back in an unrelated incident. He turned sideways and hit the outside wall himself and made pretty good contact and had to make a pit stop there to try to get the fenders cleared from the tires. And then the following pit stop or caution flag was because of Jerry's
Caught a tire.
inability to get the tires off the fenders.
There you go. Under this caution flag, Mark Martin
Just kind
pitted.
of spelling it out for you here.
Actually,
appreciate it.
wasn't Jerry's job to get the fenders off the tires.
Well,
He
he's the
probably-
one that put them on there. He's got to take a little responsibility.
He's got a point.
He's got a point.
Mark Martin pitted under this yellow after just 4 laps of green to change tires on his car and dropped all the way to 33rd spot. 4 laps.
He wasn't happy with those 4.
No, it couldn't have been,
I
because
guess.
Mark will usually live with whatever he's got with at the beginning of the race to make sure it comes in later. And he must have been pretty unhappy with the way the car was running or whatever he had going on.
Fell all the way to 33rd at that point. There would be some more spins and crashes in the opening 100 laps, while Dale Jr., Mike Skinner, and Jeremy Mayfield took turns leading. Tony Stewart went to the front at lap 107 and began to dominate. Mayfield would suffer some bad luck at lap 145 when he comes to pit road for a stop. Just as there's trouble off turn number 4. We will see the trouble first. Looking ahead from Elliott Sadler's car, look left.
You'll have that there. He just got a little bit loose right on the bottom of the racetrack and corrected, and the thing just wobbled out from underneath of him. Jeremy's on pit road, as you said, Alan, as the wreck happens, but he's able to charge on through, still lost the lap, though.
Fell back to 20th position. The reason Jeremy was on pit road there, a cut right front tire.
Yeah, we saw a lot of that yesterday, and that stuff all has to be related. It has to do with camber and air pressure and the fact that we run so fast around Dover. And, teams get a little bit aggressive with that camber. That's the way the tire sits on the front of the car. You tilt it in so when you go in the banks, the thing's on the track better. You tilt it in too much so it wears the inside of the tire, and that's where we saw all the problems yesterday.
The pit stops under that yellow.
I'm just making this stuff up, man.
The pit stops under the yellow were a little bit dicey because Bodine fired his car up, turned around and drove it down pit road, and did it just before the leaders got to pit road. So when everybody came down the pit lane trying to get stopped in their pit stalls,
There was oil.
everywhere.
Yeah, all the way down pit road. We had that happen a couple times yesterday. But you fire those things up, you're not sure what you knocked off when you wrecked. And he knocked off something that oil passes through. So instead of passing through the whole system, it just passed out onto the pit road.
And may I make one point here? If you,
Why not? We expect
We know you're
different.
gonna.
if you wreck a car and you can drive it to the garage, it's
don't-
not as bad. It doesn't count.
Yeah, it doesn't
It's not
count.
as bad of a wreck as if you wreck and you got to get out of it and they tow it in. So
Yeah,
that's
well,
why
no.
you see drivers drive them back in.
Hey, I drove it back. I can't help it. Y'all didn't fix it. I brought it back here for you.
Now, what's the motivation for the driving it back? Is it simply because that keeps you from having to go to the care center for the checkup?
No, you have to go to the care center.
No, not if you drive
Not
it
if you're
back.
driving it.
Really?
Not if you drive it back. If you drive it back, then you don't have to go to the infield care center.
It's really
and plus you can
silly.
say, well, it took a while. We couldn't quite fix it. It's not like you wrecked. You just tweaked it a little bit and they couldn't quite fix it. You got it back to the pit stall for them to fix.
There you go. It seemed to me like the outside lane in the opening laps of the race Sunday was a little more dicey than it's been the last few times at Dover. We saw Rusty Wallace slide up in the outside lane, lose a bunch of spots in the early laps. We saw some other guys get shuffled back. In fact, I want to illustrate that and how traffic impacted use of that outside lane here. At laps 198 and 199, Mike Skinner and Dale Earnhardt are racing for third position. Skinner chooses the outside lane to try and go by the lap cars and winds up back in 8th before it's over.
Some of that could be that, like Mikey said, the tire, and like was going back to qualifying, The tire was maybe a little more conservative, and
Whoa.
That's pretty tight.
yeah, that was potential for disaster.
Yeah.
But maybe the tire was or tire was a little more conservative, and that wouldn't let you get up there in that outside lane.
And too, it's always become a 2 to 3 groove racetrack in years past, and we didn't get that. The outside was extremely slippery. I mean, you could get in on the outside, getting down into the corners, but you couldn't come off the corners like it's normal, and it might be because the tires, well, we don't know why. The track wasn't taking the rubber like it normally does, but you couldn't quite go as good on the outside coming off.
Also seemed like all weekend in both races, it was very hard if you were underneath somebody coming off the corner. The guy on the bottom was very, very touchy as to his ability to carry speed off the corner. Yes? Agree? Disagree?
Yeah, you were all over that. Okay.
Thank you. Couldn't even see that from the broadcast booth.
Yep.
Let's take a commercial break here. We'll continue with our review of the MBNA Platinum 400 from Dover in just a minute. My guest Thursday night at 7 Eastern Time on This Week in NASCAR is Ricky Rudd. Got a question for Ricky? Leave it on the GM fan forum at that phone number. Ricky Rudd, Thursday, 7 Eastern on Speed Vision. Tony Stewart, Greg Zippodelli exchanging congratulations after dominating and winning the MBNA Platinum 400 on Sunday in Dover. We review the event now with our expert panel, Michael, Johnny, and Kenny. The second half of the race, well, Tony Stewart certainly was dominant, but there were a couple of twists of plot thrown in there as well. We had a fuel mileage situation that developed and then went away, and we had Stewart losing track position and gaining it back. All that kind of threw the winner in doubt up until the final miles. Tony's dominating since lap 107. He's built up a 7-second lead on the second-place car. But then there's trouble on the backstretch involving a couple of cars racing for 6th position. Those cars would be Mike Skinner and Rusty Wallace.
They came together. And you know, this is amazing that you can spin at Dover and not hit anything. We saw a couple of guys do that yesterday, and Rusty Wallace was real fortunate. Good thing Ricky Rudd was there that didn't panic and just kind of watched Rusty and figured out where he was going to go and let it develop. And Rusty's left front tire was cut when those cars came together, and that caused him to lose control.
They came together because why?
It's just
Running close.
Yeah.
But it was just, you know, just a good racing deal, and it was lucky enough that he started to spin far enough down the backstretch that he missed the inside wall.
Skinner just came up a little bit as they exited the corner. Rusty was all the way out, but then that's certainly understandable. It's hard to get those cars off the turn Dover. Like you said, the guy on the inside's got his hands full. That was a great point you made earlier.
Yeah.
With all the banking, it makes it extremely tough to.
What do you want?
Were we supposed to say something about
the
that
pit
round?
stop? I don't think so.
We'll get there in just a second.
Okay, well, the video's already over.
I know the video's
Let's keep
over.
rolling. I got a lot of stuff I want to add later.
But we've never worried about
got some comments
the
we
proper
wanna
way
make.
of doing television on this show anyway.
Okay.
The leaders did pit there on that caution. Then with 1 lap to go before the restart, Stewart, Bobby Labonte, Dale Jarrett, and Ricky Rudd stopped to top off the fuel with 108 laps to go. Stewart falling from the lead to 6th for the restart. 108 laps.
It's been tight. Been real tight if it would have went green the whole way. Yeah, but
Isn't it ironic
they're
that
going for
last
it.
year the race was decided with a green flag pit stop or a caution flag pit stop with 107 laps to go, and Bobby Labonte made that stop and ran all the way to the finish and won the race because of it? This time it appeared as if the same thing was setting up a run from 108 to go to the end. Could they make it? Could they not? But only this time Bobby Labonte wasn't the only one that took the gamble. There was 4 or 5 of them that decided to, and that was dictated, Alan, by the fact that there was only 4 or 5, 6 cars on the lead lap at that time, so people didn't mind taking a chance, losing a little bit of track position and getting their gas and being ready to go to the end.
Boy, he was. I'm impressed. You were all over that.
Well, you
weren't
know why I know so much?
He was in the garage already by this time.
you were listening on him.
Listening to the radio, had scanners, I was doing it all.
Stewart restarted in 6th position at that point with 108 to go, and he needed only 44 laps to get all the way up into the lead. He was flying.
He was impressive. He was charging too to get back to the front, and he said that he didn't think they could make it, even though they stopped with 108 to go. So his plan of attack was to get the lead and get as big a lead as he could, so hopefully he could pit and still win the race, or at least be a factor.
He is just all over this today.
I'm auditioning for one of the major networks.
Is that what it is?
Trying to show everybody that I really do know what's going on if I actually care to display it occasionally.
Oh, okay.
You're not sure about this driving deal? You finally thinking this thing might dry up or what?
I'm finally beginning to agree with you, Schrader. It's not looking good right now.
Dale Earnhardt knows that he can't make it to the finish on fuel as well. With 25 to go, he bails out to pit road, takes on some gas and some right side tires. Joe Nemechek and Mike Skinner stop a lap later. And then 5 laps after that, bad luck befalls all of that group when there is trouble in turn number 3. It happens right around the leader.
Yeah, I figured it was going to be Gordon because about 2 laps before that, same thing happened to me, but I was fortunate enough that it happened early enough I didn't hit nothing. And of course, with this happening to Jeff, it threw to yellow. And it's a good thing these rolls weren't reversed because this would have been a lot bigger deal.
That's true. Are you thinking the yellow should have come out for yours, John? Is that what you're saying here?
No, I didn't want the yellow to come out. I want everybody to still make their pit
I was surprised
under.
the yellow came out there.
Yeah, he was.
When he got farther down the front stretch, he shed some parts and pieces.
Yeah, and
things.
plus he couldn't get to the pit. If he could have got to the pit right there, maybe not.
So everybody comes to pit road here, and it takes the fuel mileage out of the equation. What it also does is takes Dale Earnhardt and Joe Nemechek out of the equation. Skinner too. Now they come out, get ready for the restart with Stewart holding the top spot. Matt Kenseth comes off pit road second. 14 to go, they go back at it, and Kenseth tries to do something with Stewart.
Yeah, but that was a tall task yesterday, Alan. Man, that 20 car was right, wasn't it?
The 20 car was extremely good, and you know, so that just shows you how good the DeWalt team was to even be able to stay with them, let alone put a run on them, because Tony Stewart and the guys were really good.
Not a Chevy on the lead lap yesterday. Ain't that something?
Well, you can't
blew
count
up.
yours. You blew up.
There were
And
only
you
5
can't count
cars on the
Earnhardt
lead.
or Joe Nemechek because of fuel. They both ran real good all day. So if you're trying to go someplace about
that,
your
you're not
aerodynamic
doing
stuff,
too good.
it's not working.
I'm just
Yeah,
making
you guys
a point.
just took a wrong time to pit, that's all.
Just making a point. Yeah, I pitted with 150 to go.
For the day.
We got back out.
9 laps to go. There would be more trouble, this time off of turn 4. Sterling Marlin and Kyle Petty will be the principals involved. Kyle driving for John Andretti.
You know, it almost looked like Kyle was getting shoved in the back too, and kind of got in the back of Sterling there, and obviously it was a pretty big wreck.
Yeah. But that front straightaway, is it something, or the front and rear back straightaway, something like 18 degrees or something?
9.
How many?
It's supposed to be 9.
It looks like it's
9.
more than that.
Here's
This
the
is the last
final
restart.
restart.
Look at Bobby Labonte making a run up the inside of Matt Kenseth. Looked like he had him passed here, but like Alan pointed out earlier, it's hard to complete those passes
Yeah,
on the inside.
that was a good call, Alan.
Yeah, right after we said the outside groove did come in.
Tony Stewart led 244 of the 400 laps. He's finished no worse than 4th at Dover in 3 career races, and he becomes the 12th different winner in 13 races this season. Who's it going to be next week? I think it's great.
Hopefully one of us.
Well, like I said, who's it going to be next week?
Hey, no.
Great day for Matt Kenseth. 1st and 2nd the last 2 weeks. Bill Elliott started last in a backup car, wound up 12th. Jeff Burton lost 26 laps changing transmissions. Mark Martin had an engine failure. Jeremy Mayfield had an engine failure. Tough day on the motor builders at Dover. Championship standings. Bobby Labonte's lead from 54 to 82 points over Ward Burton. And look who's 3rd, less than 100 points out of the top spot.
Dale Earnhardt.
They're running good
Yeah.
every week.
Yeah.
A real contender week in and week out. Jeff
I
Gordon.
was hoping somebody'd pick up on that.
Yeah.
Dale Jr.'s up to 15th, but look at Matt Kenseth. He's 12th. That rookie battle is going to be something that goes down to the end of the year.
Winston Cup cars at Michigan this weekend. Back to look at the Busch Series race from Dover next. And Keller with the Champagne Celebration Saturday at Dover. We come back now to review the MBNA Platinum 200 for the NASCAR Busch Series with Michael, Johnny, and Kenny. Our race summary shows us that we had 6 lead changes among 6 drivers, a lot of caution flag laps, and a margin of victory, a scant 0.2 of a second for Jason Keller over Mark Martin. All 6 of the race's cautions happened in the first 100 laps of the event. We begin at lap number 1, turn number 3, and a bunch of them get stacked up before they even finish the first mile. Left of your screen, the first car to go around, just out of the frame, now in it.
Yeah, he spun out. I don't know if the 81 had gotten into him or not. It didn't look like it. It looked like he just went in there and lost it, which is unusual for Ron. He's about the most car control guy I've ever seen. He can hang on to one.
Dover's tricky.
It is. It says that.
Fresh
for
set
sure.
of tires and
That's his first
first lap
visit
and-
there as well, so I'm sure he was surprised when that happened.
Air pressure's down. and sticker tires there this week. Usually stickers have been stickers were a little more treacherous this week than we've seen there in the past, so that would have been real easy.
Ashton Lewis and Scott Pruitt out before they even finished the first lap of the race. The others all involved in that incident would continue. The story of the first half of the race, besides all the crashes and cautions, was a rookie driver with a dominant car. Kevin Harvick started on pole in Richard Childress's machine, and boy, he put a hurting on the field in the first 100 miles.
His car was extremely good, and like I say, he was just gone and just putting the lead, like kind of what Tony Stewart was doing in the Winston Cup race, but he lost some of that a little bit later.
A lot of times, though, when you start on the pole and you got a good car like Kevin had here, you get a big lead and you get a little bit of false sense of security because you got guys like Jason Keller, Martin, who's having some troubles and are having to work up through the field, and you're out there leading the race and you're saying, okay, we're good today. But the crew, if they're watching that scoring monitor, they're checking out guys that are behind them that are faster than they are, and they're saying, okay, we got to make this car better in order to beat these guys when it comes down to it.
Kevin led all but 5 of the first 102 laps of the event, but would fade back into the pack in the second half of the race, although still get a pretty decent finish out of it. More trouble in the early going. Lap 30, turn number 2. We'll see the aftermath of a very hard hit.
Yeah, he said that...
that would be Hank Parker Jr., the he.
Yeah. No, actually, the he I was speaking of was Bobby Hamilton Jr.
Yeah.
He said Martin had a piece of trash in his jet.
Is that what he said?
No, he
And it
said...
caused him
He
to
said,
wreck.
"What all these
No.
people are saying stuff."
Bobby Jr. said that he didn't know what the blank Hank Jr. was thinking because he wrecked him. Mark had a change metering box, the whole thing, with the jets in it, the 2 front jets.
Pretty amazing.
quick as well.
It's amazing, especially at Dover when you consider it's a mile track, 43 cars in line, that they could get it done and get back out on the lead lap. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. Fell back to 35th at the time, but would get a good bit of his track position back at lap 56 when the caution waves again. That's not all that many laps later after the jet change there. That's Andy Santerre, somehow not hitting anything when he spins down the front stretch.
That's hard to do there.
We saw that a lot. Michael Waltrip pits in 4th position here after a strong run to the front in his little Band-Aid Chevy.
Yes.
Where does he come out of the pits?
28th. How about that?
Okay.
I thought I was going to win that race Saturday. My car on Friday afternoon was perfect, and I felt so confident I was going to win, and I came from 14th to 4th and was the fastest car on the track. And then we had a little trouble on that pit stop and got us behind and just could never quite get it back.
Okay, can we cover the rest of the race now?
Yes, I would just like to make that announcement on half a Band-Aid. My car was running well.
Mark Martin just took fuel on that pit stop. It moved him back up to 7th, and he'll get back into the front couple of cars shortly. We're going to tie together the final 3 cautions into one video segment here. Let's start at lap number 73. Trouble for Matt Kenseth. He slows, he knows something's wrong, and we find out what it is a moment later.
Good thing he slowed.
Yeah.
Him and Joe Nemechek got together a couple laps before that.
That's exactly right.
And Matt started to slow down a little bit and probably slowed down at the right time.
Left rear tire was cut down on his car. This is Lance Hooper crashing at lap 81. Said he had a right front go down. This is Tim Fita spinning at lap 100. He had a left rear go down. Leaders come to pit road here, and while we watch that, I want to talk about how the outer casing separates from a tire like that, because it happened to both Matt and Tim where they're spinning around and we see the belts of the tire rolling around the racetrack, but the sidewall is still attached to the rim.
I think what happened is they probably got a small hole in it or rubbing it from obviously some contact, and probably them keep going and it's getting soft. If it's on the right side, if it's the right front, you're going straight and off, right rear, you're going to spin, but the left, they're going to run long as they can, and it starts to get low, and it just overheats it and comes apart.
That's exactly right.
That's a good explanation.
Good answer.
Overheating is the problem.
Is the key word.
Out of it. Right. No, low air.
Actually, the bump was the start of the initial deal.
There's a trail to be followed there
there's a trail.
somewhere. Martin and Kenseth had pitted at lap 87, stayed out along with Mike Dillon on those stops you saw there at the end of that video at lap 102, and they would take over the top 2 spots quickly from Dillon. Martin and Kenseth Woods as we go back racing. There's Mike Dillon in the silver car on the inside.
You know what was kind of crazy? Saturday, those Busch cars would run fine on the high side. You could go up there and pass people all you wanted. And so Sunday, when the Cup race started, we just never did see that develop. And that's interesting.
Kenseth to the lead, not for long. Mark gets under him, but suddenly energized and flying up through the pack is the red car.
And he came from a very long ways back.
Yeah, he was
also.
12th on that last restart and moved right through the field and had just a super car. He was running times at the end of the race that were just that were impressive.
Extremely good.
How does that happen? Somebody's been just kind I mean, he was good,
well,
but just
he started
not spectacular, and all of a sudden, wow.
I think though, but he started in a provisional spot, I think, didn't he? I mean,
He started way back.
He started way
a
back.
long ways back.
And you can
it
see
just
here, he just
kept coming, and
It's kind of like I
got
said.
perfect right at the end.
You know, it's easy to notice him here at the end when he gets out front, but all day long with the cautions and so forth, he had a fast car. He just took him a while to surface at the top.
Congratulations to Jason, his first win of 2000.
And also the first person to beat Mark Martin outright this year. I believe that would be correct. Jeff Burton beat him at Charlotte, but he had a... Well, Jeff Burton beat him, maybe.
And
but he was catching
Vegas. We'll put the asterisk next to that because of...
But Jeff Green beat him at Richmond, but Mark had a pit problem. There's always been kind of a if and or a but. But for sure, Jason outrun him.
Yes, he did outrun him.
Tip of the cap to Steve Addington, Jason Keller, and that entire team that I don't know the name of.
Well, you've used up your time to talk about your Band-Aids finish now. So we go to point standings. Jason moves to fourth on the result of his win. Jeff Green over Todd Bodine by 134 points now as the Busch Series cars head to South Boston and the Bull Ring this coming Saturday. Back to look at the truck race next. This week's Castro Flashback Fact takes us back to June 5th, 1983, when Ricky Rudd gets his first career victory in the Budweiser 400 at Riverside, California. It would be the first of 16 consecutive years he would win at least one race in a season.
NASCAR's Inside Winston Cup is brought to you in part by the motor oil that provides maximum protection, Castrol GTX, Drive Hard, and Lowe's Home Improvement Warehouse. Lowe's, improving home improvement.
Believe it or not.